Okay, let's start by doing a bit of work on each of the dantians. First, the belly point, the lower dantian. Contracting into there and then releasing. Pulling in and releasing. All the sphincters in the body that you have some control over tighten as you pull in, and they all release as you push out. Closing your eyes, squeezing the eyes closed, tightening the mouth, tightening around the heart, tightening around the belly, tightening the anus and the urethra sphincter, and then just releasing. Spine is flexing forward, curving up, and then the spine is extending to try and lengthen. And then let's try the one where we just reach forward. So like you're grabbing something and pulling it and bringing it into the dantian. So you open the fingers to reach, then you close the fist to grab, and then you open the hand to place it in the dantian. Now let's just do some for the heart. Same exercise as we've just done, but just reaching upwards above the head. Put one hand on the heart as you reach up. And then as though you're grabbing something again, pull it down, put it in the heart as the other one reaches up. And now for the head point, let's just do some palming. So let's just rub the hands. And have the tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth. With that sort of pointing up into the head point. So behind the eyes. And then just palming. Draw the gaze back into that head point. And then just draw that point down the tongue, the back of the throat, down the gullet and into the heart. And then from the heart, just take it down into the dantian. So now a sense that the back of your eyes are reaching down into the dantian. But one of the intensives back in the 80s, we were working on the energy skins at the end. And one of the beginners found it difficult and just complained, it's psychosomatic. And John just replied, everything is psychosomatic. So that's the place we want to be working. You're never sure. So this is why the mind needs to be really quiet and still, so that we can see the things that the mind affect. And then just bringing the hands down. And now just pulling the belly in again and blinking, so tightening the eyes and release. This is our basic action. A ring muscle contracting, a ring muscle opening. If you just tighten the hands, you can feel there's like a center which everything is pulling towards. It curves the fingers up, the fingers curl up into this clenching center. And then when you open it, that releases. So in order to open the hand, I'm effectively tightening the muscles on the back of my hand in order to stretch the palm open. So that's physically what's happening. But what I want to feel is that it's like a peristaltic action when I extend. I'm not just tightening the muscles on the back of my hand. I mean, that may be physically what's happening, but the feeling is of like squeezing a tube of toothpaste. Like the energy is extending out of my fingers endlessly. And the fingers are extending because they're tightening around. Instead of curling up and tightening by curling up. So I can have all these little rings around my fingers all the way down to the tip, and each one is tightening in turn. So the extension is a peristaltic action. And the curling in is just pulling into a center. So it's all tension, it's all this ring muscle tension, whichever phase I'm doing. So I open the hand in order to extend energy out of it. And that requires a tightening to squeeze the toothpaste out of the tips of the fingers. And then it all sucks back in. So something extends and then the center just curls up. Let's just rub the hands again and just do the knees. To begin with in Tai Chi, we struggle to relax, to let go of fearful tension. But then we need to learn to become tense in the right way. So we need to tone up, we need to pick up the slack. And spirit is like the ultimate astringent. Spirit tightens the system so that it becomes very, very responsive. Rubbing the knees. If you think of like a cosmetic astringent, like witch hazel or rubbing alcohol, when it hits the skin, the cells contract, and that gives the feeling or the effect of tightening. So it's not working on a muscular level. It's not the muscles that are getting tight. The muscles aren't working to contract. Every cell is contracting. So that's the sense that we want our good tension to be working. It's like a wake-up call. So you've woken up and you're primed for action. You're ready to respond, ready to take an order, heed a call. Let's just begin by pulling the belly in again. So start the standing where we left off with the sitting. Trying to get some flexibility into the lumbar spine. That's really important. You can't really unify upper and lower body unless you can push your lumbar back backwards. So this is effectively pushing you away from the ground. So my feet and my top of my head are separating. And then this is unifying. This is pulling everything together into a center, which is the Danjian. And then this is extending out. And again, I want the feeling that that extension is a contraction around the line that's extending. And then this just loosens those contractions, but pulls into a global center. It's easy to feel it contracting around the spine. It's like someone's grabbing your spine and sort of squeezing it. What we want to do is feel it down the legs as well. This is like where the hamstrings come in. So all the muscles in the legs have to feel as though they're tight on this phase. And then that can release, but now you're pulling into a center here. So there's a sense that the correct action of the body is using the muscles and massaging the bones all the time. So this is like squeezing the bones inside my legs, squeezing my spine. And then this just relaxes that, but pulls into this Danqian. Let it get all the way down to the toes. So as you extend here, the toes extend out. And then they clench as the fingers clench. Okay, and then just into riding horse. So Tai Chi is a martial art. So if you work correctly, it should make you feel like you're raring to go, if not itching for a fight. So the stillness is very much a stillness that's ready to explode. Feel the sacrum heavy. In one sense, it's simply an inert object, almost metallic. In another sense, it has a real liveliness. It has this feeling that it's reaching down your legs, trying to get into the ground. Feel the heart reaching upwards. The head is like an empty vessel. It's almost like someone has just cut the top of your skull off and there's like a light just shining out. But it's empty. The heart is full. And then the two circles. Feel the power coming from the center, from the dantian, turning. So there's a small movement in the center here that becomes a large movement in the hands, which are as far from the center as they can be. Let's just start off doing it this way. The same exercise we did when we were sitting down, reaching forwards and pulling into the belly. Feel the two actions. The tightening, which is the pulling in, is like your belly is calling. My belly is pulling, and then everything coils into it. But then when I extend, it's got this peristaltic action of something squeezing down the arm and out of the fingers. Feel the same thing that's happening in the arm, happening in the leg on the same side. So my arm is extending forwards, my leg is extending backwards, which is causing me to turn this way to the corner. And then the arm contracts, the leg contracts. The hand is trying to pull into the down chin, and so is the foot. The arm becomes round, so does the leg. The arm becomes straight, so does the leg. It's like yoga and Tai Chi combining or alternating. As you extend, it's like a yogic extension. There's a tightening going on in order to get the extension. And then this is the rounding, the becoming round, which is very Tai Chi. Two very different principles. And then back to the two circles, but feel it as those two phases combined and just softly conjoined. Feel the turning, always turning. Our softness, our Tai Chi, our circularity disguises an internal hardness. You're like the Zen master with this wonderful, vertical, very strict spine, clothed in these soft garments that make him appear round. Very much like Dr. Chi. You see those photographs of when he's in the park in winter and he's having to wear thick Chinese, like jacket like this, but it's padded and it's thick, makes him look round. But he wasn't, he was really skinny and lanky. He was taller than me. Feel the Danshan. Our center is right in the problem area of the body, where the upper and the lower body potentially join up. But for them to join up, my lower back has to become flexible. Back to riding horse. Feel that roundness. This is the center, and everything else is rounding out from that point. And it's as though someone has squashed you down, and your lower back, which is normally extending you out of yourself, has compressed backwards. It's almost like my lordosis is reversed. Feels like it has. I mean, it never does, but that's the feeling. And we just want to get that sort of curvature into the low back. If it's above the lumbar spine, if it's at the bottom of the thoracic spine, you'll just get a collapse there. And then the spine won't be unified anymore. So the difficulty is just getting this really down as close to the sacrum as you can get it. Very much of the Danshan, which is like this ruthless center, and not of the heart. The heart is like a compassionate feeling center. But the heart is great for dealing with living things. But if when you're dealing with the world of earth and sky and objects, then you need your Danshan. Feel the force. We're standing in a force field. Gravity is pulling you down towards the center of the earth. and the heavens are pulling you up. The upward is obviously not as strong, otherwise we'd float. But I want to feel it. So one thing anthropologists can't understand is why, until modern times, every culture on the planet was deeply religious. And I think it's because in the olden days, we were just more sensitive. And so we really felt this draw upwards. And now let's just move side to side. But the way we do, which is this sense of grabbing. So my leg and my arm strain, it's exactly the same as just pulling in like this. It's the same turn as well. So I extend, so I'm turning this way to extend, and then I contract and pull in, and that turns me around towards that foot and brings my weight into it. We want it happening in the energy before it gets to the body. So for that, we need the wings and we need the spirit, because it's the spirit that activates the energy. And then it's the energy that pulls the body along. The body is always sluggish. It's always the last to move. So here, something in me sparks. So that's like an opening. And then something in me wants to just contain that. It's like something has exploded and then I contain the explosion. So something opens and then I want to create the container that surrounds that opening. So stops it from leaking. So something explodes and then I reach around it. And that's the action that pulls me into the leg. The explosion is the spark, if you like. That's like an extension here. So, whoa. And then I have to activate my wings, because it's my wings that will come out and contain that. And for that, I just need to let my shoulder blades out and release across the sacrum. So, whoa. I extend, that's the spirit, if you like, getting a little bit angry. And then I just contain that. And that's the basic action of everything that we do as a human being. Feel it happening in the upper body, in the arm and the heart, and in the lower body, in the legs and the dantian. If we're correctly configured, then the lordosis in the lower back is reduced, and heart and dantian combine to produce one throbbing organ. And that's what's working here. My dantian and my heart are just doing exactly the same thing. They're the same. It's just top and bottom of the same thing. You just want to make sure that it does start with the spirit and then commence with the energy, and finally the body follows. If it just becomes physical, then you're not really working. You're just flogging the body. Something sparks, something tries to contain that, and that produces this movement in the body. If I spark too much, it will blow me apart, and that's when the heart and the dantian will separate. And that often happens when the mind is trying to take control. So if I really sort of go for it, it's my mind that's making this expansion. The spirit is really light and soft. So, ooh, something explodes, and then I contain that. Okay, let's just bring it back. Maybe dantian with these two arms that are reaching down the legs. Two roots extended down the legs and into the ground. And now let's do the figure of 8 around the feet. So it's effectively the two circles, but instead of doing two separate circles, I'm doing one figure of 8. So both of my hands are with the same loop. I want this coming from the turning. What I don't want to do is move side to side too much, because you'll feel it. It sort of dissipates the energy. A lot of the energy is wasted in needless physical movement. So I turn. And so I don't need to do this to go around the figure of 8. I can just turn and extend my mind, and then I will loop around this foot. So again, it's my spirit, it's my imagination, and that will set up this flow of energy. And then I sort of nudge it. It's an interesting use of the mind. You're sort of squeezing it into a path. feel the middle finger coming into this point in the groin, helping the hip joint, which comes up into the sacroiliac, release so that something can squeeze out here and come round. So there's this sense that this goes in here, releases the sacroiliac here, something comes out of the sacroiliac, and it's that energy coming out that drags my arm along with it. I just want the sense that the energy's leading. The energy's leading the body. The world we're trying to work in, it's like a netherworld. It's like the world between wakefulness and sleep. You know how sometimes, like often in the morning before it's time to get up, you can be dreaming, but you're also sort of semi-conscious. So you're conscious that you're dreaming. And you don't wake up because the dream is enjoyable. But there is a sense that your conscious mind can have some sort of influence on this dream. So it is very much like you think something and it happens in the dream, or there's a sense of your, again, like this peristaltic action in the body, something in you is squeezing, and that pushes the narrative of the dream in a certain direction. That's the place where we're working. It's the site of energy, when nothing is for sure. As we work, sort of tightens up. It becomes more of that peristaltic action. It's like the energy has gone up a notch, not in amplitude, but in frequency. So the higher the frequency, the more energy. And then effectively, the two circles of the figure of eight split, and you've got the figure of eight exercise. So when we do the figure of eight exercise, we just want the sense that it's wrapping around your own body. It's not just something that's happening out here. It's really getting around me. It has to be able to slip behind me and reach up my spine from behind. when we have these two vertical figures of 8s, then effectively we have a waist. So we have this tightening here, which is what we were trying to get rid of when we were trying to reverse the lordosis in the lower back. So that we have this sort of squat, this feeling of the heart and the dantian moving towards each other to become one sort of central thing round about where your solar plexus is. So like a ball. But then there's a frequency higher than that, which is when the ball twists and splits into a figure of 8. And then you develop this tightness here and this sense of movement in the spine, not just on this plane and this plane, but sort of within itself. So this sense that I'm really tightening to squeeze this movement along this path. So it can't go quickly. If it goes quickly, then it will sort of slip and slide and you'll lose it. So it's just central equilibrium again, but the forces that you're balancing are really strong. Just imagine it's raining. Rain is an image of gravity. All these little arrows pointing down. Just imagine you're clad in cotton, and as the cotton is soaking up the rain, it's shrinking as cotton does. So there's a sense that there's a layer that's contracting, like you're rubbing witch hazel on your skin all over your body and everything is tightening up. So that's John's wetsuit. So every part of your body is being squeezed by spirit. In one sense, spirit is trying to explode outwards and everything is rupturing, like every cell in your body bursts open. But in another sense, it's actually contracting all of the cells and just pulling you together into this really potent unity centered here. So this is the thing about spirit. It's like the energy of the unification brings everything together, but it's also the energy of explosion. Where you pull yourself together, pick up the slack in order to get the job done. So I think this was, the story of the Bodhidharma when he came to the Shaolin Temple in China, having left India. And it was just full of all these Taoist monks, all just sort of sitting with these sloppy postures and these sloppy minds, basically idle. And he realized they don't have a body, a proper body. So he trained them up to have a really well primed, toned body. And then your meditation can mean something. So we need both all the time. And the work is just, you're just looking at it and seeing, where am I slackening off a little bit? Okay, I need to tighten that up. Am I getting too tense here? I just need to release that a little bit. Okay, now let's just squat down because this is incredibly important. So psychologically, just being able to get closer to the earth than you can within a riding horse posture. The fact that my feet now are pulled right up towards the Danjian just means my Danjian has more presence. I can't avoid it. Stay on the whole foot, but just reach forwards. What we'd like to be able to do is just reach the hands right forwards and touch the forehead onto the ground. We'd like that much flexibility in the hips and the spine. I mean, it's tall order, unless you've been doing it from a very young age. But with your mind, you can imagine it. You can feel your spine extending forwards with the arms. So you have to push back with your body a little bit so that you remain with the heels as your arms are and your spine are reaching forwards. And then bringing it up to prayer posture, but coming onto the toes. So just coming off the heels and onto the toes. So this is an exercise. So rocking back onto the heels and reaching forwards. And then coming back onto the toes, up into prayer posture. So now I have the vertical spine, even if it's leaning forwards a little bit, it feels pretty straight and vertical. And then I just let that go. So I push my sacrum backwards and reach forwards with my hands, come back onto the whole foot. Feel the spine extending from the neck. And then just bring it back up. This should feel quite proud, but also wobbly because you're off the heels. But this is how the sumo guys confront each other before the fight. And then just rocking back onto the heels and reaching forwards again, letting the spine really bow. Then onto the toes again, up into prayer. And then just stay on the toes and just bring the hands down, just bring some weight over the arms. Feel the contact. So the ground under your hands is of a very different order than the hands themselves. So there's a lot happening in that point of touching, in that interface. Everything touches and touches everything. So when you reach out and touch something, just for that moment of touching, it becomes part of you. There's no longer subject and object. So that's what we want when we look at something. So when I look at something, that moment of intense gazing, that object becomes me and I become the object. And then I can release it just by taking my eyes away. So you become the world you see. You become impressionable. Everything is making an impression upon you. Everything is digging into your soul. So apparently this is just the way people were before the Renaissance. Apparently it was about 1100. And suddenly people started objectifying the world, seeing something that was separate from them, something to be analyzed. A resentful rationalism. Why would you keep something away from you? If not because you're so engrossed with your own complaints. And then let's stand up. And now let's just come and just lean on the wall. So the same idea. I'm touching the wall with my hands. And just leaning forwards. Just a little bit. feel the spine. I'm using the spine to sort of push my feet and my hands away from each other. I'm pushing into the wall, but with the action of my spine. My arms and legs need to work as well. They take up the slack, if you like, but it's the action in my spine that's actually pushing on the wall more than just my weight. So my feet are trying to extend backwards and my hands are pushing forwards, but also a little bit up. And then just bring one foot forwards, and now just the one leg. So I'm really straightening this leg, driving it back, squeezing my spine into my hands. And then just swap the feet around. Feel the strength from the foot, up the leg, across the hip, into the sacrum, coming all the way up the spine, across the shoulders and down the arms. And now let's just finish. So Dantian and sacrum. Dantian is a center. The center has a sense of movement from outside into it, and it also has a sense of movement from the inside out. So the centrifugal and the centripetal. You just feel that centripetal pull into the Dantian that's just helping the lower back just round out. So my spine is just one simple C shape, one simple curve. It hasn't become the S. And then just feel the ground and squeeze. So something in me has to push. Something in me is working in order to squeeze the toothpaste out of the end of the tube. So this is where I'm contracting and squeezing my bones. So that's the sense of something coming upwards. It's nothing to do with the pull from above, which is operating upon the heart and the spirit. This is more like a reaction to the ground, a reaction to gravity. Gravity is pulling me down, and I can use that and work against it, not by simply doing this, but by twisting and wriggling to get this sense of something growing up my spine. The more energy I have, the more higher frequencies I can establish on this growth that comes up. And so in a sense, the closer it can get to me, it gets into every little nook and cranny of my body. If it's just the one base fundamental frequency, it's just a curve like this, I'm contained within it, but it's not touching me. Maybe my feet at the top of the head, but the higher the frequencies, the more wriggly it is, the closer it can get to the core of my bones, which is what I want. This is the sort of the packing into the bones, like you're squeezing the bones and just pushing into this central core. It's almost like every bone has like this thin core of taut wire. And that can transmit really sort of high frequencies. So you become like this transmitter. So you're talking to God, or he's talking to you. He's just resonating. You're sitting there, as still as stone. But if you're toned up in the right way, then you're buzzing. You're not moving, you're just vibrating. And then let's just bring it up. Let's just try just a little bit of this. But this is like going up a frequency. If you think riding a horse is like the base, the fundamental frequency. And this is now taking it up. This is the octave, if you like. But then within that, you've also got the other frequencies, because you've got this move or something across each foot. So as soon as the one splits into two, then you can have proliferation. Then the two can become four, four can become eight, and so on. And I'm just bringing it back. So you bring it back really simply by just sinking into the heels. As soon as the heels hit the ground, there's a sense of earthing. So these higher frequencies tend to drain away. It's like tiptoeing around. You tiptoe around and you become really sensitized and responsive. As soon as you put your heels down, as you relax, and the world stops being so interesting. Energy is eternal delight. William Blake. The marriage of heaven and hell. That last sentence in Wittgenstein's Tractatus Whereof we cannot speak, thereof we must remain silent. So we're silent because words make matters worse. Only in silence can the world really expose itself. As soon as I start investigating, spirit flees. Nature loves to hide.